Hello, welcome back. This is Studmuffin 1986, and today I'm going to be doing a guide on how to play with the FCM 50T French Tier 8 Premium Tank. New tank that just came out in the game and can be a little bit difficult to play with. And I'll go in to show you why just here in a bit. So first off, one of the things that you'll notice about this tank is just its size. This thing is massive. I mean, just look at it compared to a TOG. Let's just go into just look at a couple other tier 8s like the KB5, which is also a beast, or even the Centurion, which is also a pretty big medium tank. You can just see that this FCM 50T is a pretty beastly tank. And so with tanks this size comes the difficulty of being able to hide yourself. So if you're still in the decision-making process of whether to get the FCM 50, this is a spreadsheet I had put together on how this tank compares against other Tier 8 light and medium tanks. You can see that this has the largest hit point pool of 1500. It actually has the third fastest amount of acceleration out of all Tier 8 tanks, which is pretty good considering its size. Decent rate of fire, also average alpha damage, okay DPM, overall not that bad of a tank, especially those it's compared against other Tier 8 light and mediums. So enough of that, let's actually dive into the guide of how to play with this tank. So you'll notice in the upper left hand corner that this is a medium tank, which is interesting because in the PC version of World of Tanks it's actually labeled as a heavy, whereas in Blitz they labeled it as a medium instead, which makes more sense, being that given its armor specs we'll go into here in a bit, its speed, acceleration, everything else about it, you'll see that this tank is more so played like a medium rather than a heavy tank. So from what we know about medium and light tanks is their whole role is to spot and flank, meaning putting yourself in a quick position on the battlefield to report those enemy positions to your teammates in a safe manner so that they're able to close in on the enemy and rain down fire upon them. So now if we go in to look at its armor, under the armor inspector here, just against another Tier 8 medium cannon, you can really see that this thing does not have a whole lot of protection head on. Most likely just about anything will easily be able to penetrate this tank, and given its size, being it's so huge, that does make it very difficult. You can see just here on the side, by putting yourself at a steep angle with side scraping, you will have some protection, but doing it a little bit too much, you're just going to end up, just being too vulnerable to any hits whatsoever just around this entire thing. So, given its size, once again, it can make it a bit difficult to try to protect this tank, but it is very, very possible to be able to still effectively play with this thing, even given its size and such weak armor. So, once again, going back into the side scraping, you can see just from the sides the dark blue. Even when behind a wall, the front of your plate's still going to be exposed a little bit, given your turret's so far up in the front, making it even a little bit more difficult. But you can see here you can still do some side scraping, but you don't want to rely on it too much. Going in and looking at the gun depression, seeing that it's a -8, pretty average when it comes to medium tanks across the board. So, and with it being so tall too, it can seem like it has less gun depression, more like a 7 or even a 6, even stating that it's an 8, but has some armor, just here and there, not very much. You can't rely on it too much. So once again, you do not want to be putting yourself in positions where you're having to rely on your armor that much. Even as you can see here, when peeking up over hills, your armor is still not quite sloped enough to even rely on. And even putting it at an angle here, you can see it's just still quite not that reliable enough. Still making it quite easy for enemies to penetrate, so you're going to want to do a lot of peek-a-boom shots, just peeking your cannon and turret out just very quick, taking shots and then backing up pretty quick. So in going in and looking at the specs here, once again 1500 hit points, which is pretty good. And then looking at its armor, 120 millimeters and 80 millimeters of side armor. It's funny because this thing practically has the same exact build as the low body, but the frontal hull armor isn't as sloped, making it a bit weaker. Looking at the engine power, 1,000 horsepower, which is really good, especially given it only weighs about a little over 54 tons. Speed limit of 51. And then looking at its gun, fairly average. From the spreadsheet, it doesn't have the highest DPM, pretty average DPM, but good penetration for a premium tank. 265 millimeters, and if you also include a couple APCR shells, that also does give you a good amount of penetration, making it not so difficult to pen other enemies on the battlefield. A problem I have with this tank is it has 10 meters less than all other medium tanks of view range, and so I apply camo to try to help compensate for that. For consumables, if anything, if you're credit conservative, I would highly recommend the multi-purpose restoration pack. I also use the accelerant just to try to increase my speed to get to those effective positions on the battlefield. Provisions I don't use just because of how expensive they are, and you will lose a lot of credits. This is the amount of ammunition I use, just some APCR just in case, most AP, and then just a couple HE rounds for those quick base shots if you don't have a good shot at those that are capping or about to cap and win. And then for my equipment, I use coated optics to try to increase and help my view range, gun rammer, increase rate of fire, and then binoculars to also increase my view range, since that's very important with this tank being a medium. You can see just very well here that the traverse and turret rotating speed is very quick, which will be very helpful. And then just focusing on the turning of the hull, once again you can see that it's also very quick. Just focusing on the turret now, you can see that it's also fairly good, not super fast. And then also when aiming on targets downrange, you've got pretty good aim time. It's really not too bad. This is kind of the side scraping method I was going into just a little bit earlier. You want to keep your angle very, very steep, just like how I'm doing here. Unfortunately, it's not going to 100% cover even the front, but you will be able to protect yourself a little bit better. With the acceleration, you can see just how good the acceleration is with this tank, even with it being so big. The acceleration is very impressive. Once again, from that spreadsheet, ranking the third fastest accelerating tank of all Tier 8 medium and lights. So now let's just go into some gameplay here. So here, just desert sands, top of the totem pole, which is nice. Told the whole team to go right, but of course, you just have those games where just nobody's listening. They all go left. Knowing that they have a majority of their enemies be mediums, I can't just go rush on my own over to this right side. So I'm going to play just a little bit more cautiously, use this hill to try to protect myself as much as possible, since if I were to move up forward, I would just get absolutely swarmed, since I just realized my whole team is primarily going left for some reason. But I do have some backup, which is good, so I'm going to stay right here. See a Centurion. Was able to detect him, fortunately, before he was able to detect me, thinking that maybe my camo was able to help me out there. Just continue raining down fire on him, just backing up, not utilizing or relying on my armor, I should say, for protection. So just, being very situationally aware. I would say, if you're once again in the decision-making process of thinking about getting this tank, and you're very more so a newer player, not very experienced, this can be a very difficult tank to play with. And also, if you're that type of player where you love just bouncing shells, you can see even just right here trying to, this is not the tank for it. I would say this is a very expert level tank, but if you know how to play with this thing can be a lot of fun to play with. I do really like the FCM. And so once again, taking shots. Another thing I really like about this thing is it has great reverse acceleration and speed. Being able to quickly get behind those objects after doing just some peek-a-boom shots to help protect yourself. So once again, just very good, very maneuverable. Just finishing off the enemies here and just closing in on just the last couple we have. Fortunately, our team was able to come out just out at the dunes here and provide some help, so that was really good. But yeah, I mean, you can see, you know, this tank really isn't too bad. If you know how to use it, know how to protect yourself, use the landscape to also protect yourself, this could be a pretty good tank. So, good game. Normally not as aggressive as I normally am, mainly because they had just so much more mediums than we did on that one flank, and so I had to be a little bit more cautious, so I didn't get flanked. But as you can see, I was well positioned, was still able to get plenty of really good shots off the enemy, and just was able to play smart and not completely rely on my armor a whole lot in order to be effective. So here we are going into the rock field, trying to get my team to go left, still trying to figure out this map, being it's still fairly new, only played this map just a handful of times, but trying to take the very basic military strategy and taking the high ground. Went to this area to see if I could detect any of their enemies just coming up the side of that hill, but unfortunately I just didn't quite have the view range. Most mediums of tier 8, medium and light tanks, have a view range of 260 meters, but unfortunately I believe it's just the FCM and the Super Pershing that only have 250 millimeters. So once again, I used the binoculars and the coated optics to try to help my view range, and use the camo to try to somewhat help against being detected before the other enemy medium and light tanks could detect me, because they've got a better view range. So here I am, just peek-a-booming, I guess is just what it's called, just barely peeking my turret up, keeping the majority of my tank covered, and then once I've got a shell loaded, just peek up, just looking for any kind of shot I could possibly get. Tunnel vision just a little bit there. That Rudy was able to get just a good shot on me, but just any shots I can just possibly take by just barely peeking up over this hill and just taking shots upon them. So looks like our team's doing really good. Just about the entire enemy's dead here. Just gonna go ahead and close in and just finish them off. Looks like a lot of them died really fast, almost all at the same time. So no point in just hanging back. Time to move forward and try to clean house. Had a really bad luck shot there. And even you see there, even with me trying to angle myself, as much as I was, that IS-3 was still able just to put one right through me. So just finishing up the game here. Good game by the enemy, well played by our team. And yeah, you can see that this tank can be a very effective tank if utilized correctly. Definitely, my recommendation is, if once again you are thinking about buying this tank, it's not so much for newer players, but if you do really well with light and mediums, I think you'll also do well with this one. Thank you for watching. This is Stud Muffin 1986, and take care.